Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
Fridays to me, talking about the Bills. What else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen. Deep downfield. Wide open.
Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Massare, here with Mike Bundt. Got a fun June edition for you. Got to break the narrative, as we call it here. Lots to talk about, a lot of preconceived notions, a lot of topics, a lot of discussion, and we want to get into some of the most popular ones. Mike, how are you on this beautiful Friday or Friday night at this point? And Mike is muted still.
Good start to the show, Kev.
Yeah, well, we've all been there with our mute button, Mike.
Doing great overall. Beautiful day. Would be doing a little bit better if it wasn't the sun directly on my face and I could actually see where I was looking right now. But great weekend planned. It's my dad's birthday tomorrow. Going to get a lot of pool time these next 2 days. So just doing absolutely wonderful and excited to talk some Bills football right now.
Yeah, and funny enough, it's the intro video, so we're going to blame our brand new intro video. Shout out to the Cover One team. We made some great footage here with Chris here as one of our video producers. So it was came out nice. We hope you guys like that, but always love to put the intro video on first to kind of get the show rolling. But Mike, we have a great topic for today. Really no huge news. I mean, obviously, some OTAs were going on. Josh Allen played in his golf match. Not too much happened over the course of the last week. So that's why we're going to bring some cool topics, Mike, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So today you already hit on it, breaking the narrative. People are going to be like, what does that mean? Well, every offseason you have a bunch of different storylines across the NFL, and some of them make sense, and some of them are just irrational and completely pointless media fabrications of the truth, just to get some stories out, get some clicks, get some pub. Today, we're going to go through a lot of those different storylines, some with the Bills, and then some across the league, including storylines involving Deshaun Watson, Tua, Kansas City, Brian Dable and the Giants, and so forth. But a lot of fun things to get to today.
Yeah, absolutely. And pretty excited for these narratives. There's like a lot of good discussion. Like there's things you see on Twitter, there's things you just see in general. There's just like a lot of good talking points for it being June. And that's kind of where I wanted to start. But, it's always fun to kind of get into it a little bit in terms of like what you're looking forward to seeing before we break the narrative, as Mike already alluded to. Like some of the early topics for me, I'm really interested to see what this offensive line can do together. That's like one topic that I've always been very focused on. And I really am interested to see if Rick Bates can keep up his play again. And that's, to me, like one of the cornerstones of this offense is if, they gave him good tender money, he was signed to over $4.5 million to be the right guard of this offense and kind of be that piece that was missing last year. In terms of like, look, like they still didn't. Darrell Williams is still out there. He didn't play very great at times. I watched one of the fourth down plays by Josh Allen all the time in the divisional game. And I mean, that right side of the line just got absolutely annihilated, Mike. So it's going to be really interested to see if this guard play can really, the addition of Saffold, the addition or really the rebirth or the renewal of Rick Bates can really keep it going, Mike. So that's like one narrative I had in mind was like, what are your expectations for the offensive line just in general?
I expect the line to be improved this season. I like the additions that they brought to the team with Roger Saffold. I like that Ryan Bates is going to be most likely a starter on this right side of the line next year. Spencer Brown, another year of experience going into his sophomore season. I think they're going to be better. And especially in the run game, I feel like a lot of these guys that they brought in are going to help them in the run game going forward. Late in the season, obviously the Bills had it rolling heading into the playoffs where they were nearly unstoppable. But Bills are going to try to hit it strong from the beginning this year, and I really like the collection of talent that they put together. But as we've seen, you can have solid guys. It's how they come together as a unit. As they said on the other shows, Aaron Cromer might play just as big of a role as any addition to the Bills' offensive line this season.
That's very true. And can we keep it up? Can we keep that offensive line up? Because the team plays differently when that offensive line is strong. And we also appreciate everybody tuning in this time of year. It is a very nice Friday here in Western New York. The wife and I just got back from hitting up some restaurants here for the first time in a long time. So it's beautiful out. So we appreciate everybody tuning in, viewing in. It's pretty much, yeah, good point. It is the dark time of the year. So that's why we have some great topics here for you. And we're going to get into it now, Mike. We're going to get into the breaking the narrative topics here. The first one is that we have jotted down. Can the Bills can't win the big one with Sean McDermott, and coaching is holding them back, Mike. What are your opinions of that narrative?
I think it's a false narrative. Just because you haven't won before doesn't mean that you can't win one going forward. This is one that it's not a big one, but you're hearing a few people mumble and bring it up around the Buffalo community just because it's back-to-back years where they had strong regular seasons but fell short to Kansas City in the playoffs. I say we give McDermott a few more years before we actually start making this narrative something substantial.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming into play like where you got to come up with something, right? The team's good. The roster's good. Well, what's the problem? Why do they keep losing at certain situations? And Sean McDermott, as we break down on the show, and we will continue to this year, has an exceptional record against, and I'll tweet it out throughout the year, an exceptional record against teams under 500. He's a really good coach. That Jacksonville game, and I like to say this all the time, and I know people don't like the way I say Jaguars, like Jaguars. Mike, how do you say Jaguars?
Jaguars.
Come on, that's right.
I don't know. If that's wrong, I don't want to be right.
It's Jaguar, right? Like I don't know. Like it
doesn't
really matter.
Corrected the other day, so I don't know. No, they didn't correct me. They corrected you. So
yeah, but you say it like the same as me, though. Like I don't.
I'm not as relevant as you. It doesn't matter.
I guess so. Hit me up in the comments or in general. Like I don't understand this Jaguar thing. Jaguar. I'm really good at enunciations, but I guess I struggle with that one. Anyways, Sean McDermott generally wins against those teams. Like he is really good. Yeah, he might be better prep than he is on game day. We have seen the propensity to struggle in game. Like you got to say it, Mike, the special teams blunder at the end of the game to not kick it through the end zone was an error. It was an error. It was a statistical error. It was supposed to have been called down. The special teams coach is now gone. There needed to be some type of move there made. And I thought the special teams coordinator, they have struggled in the past. I didn't think Heath Farwell was very good. I just did not think overall he was a very good special teams coordinator. I'm glad the Bills moved on from him. But that blunder, yes, it's the special teams coordinator fault. That's a huge moment of a huge game. That's not week 4 against the Dolphins up 7 or up 12. That situation absolutely needs to be buttoned up and shored up. There should be no debates about if that's what you wanted to do, which conceivably that's what we've heard, that ball should have been through the end zone. That needs to be down into the locker room, or onto the field and triple onto the field, not double, triple onto the field. And it didn't make its way on. You had Tyler Bass doing something differently than the coverage unit. It just didn't. That's the kind of blunder you can't have. And yes, you can say it's on the special teams coordinator, which they did basically end up saying by their actions. But he does need to come through against teams above 500. And I'm not sitting here and saying that you need to win every game against teams above 500. No coach does. But I do believe that they do need to do a little bit better against offensive teams. Look, the number 1 defense in the league basically held back this team from the Super Bowl. Listen to that. The number 1 overall defense prevented this team from winning a Super Bowl. It doesn't make any sense, Mike.
Yeah, it's something that was definitely a disappointment to fall short in the biggest moment of the biggest game of your career. And I'll say that last year's divisional was even bigger than the AFC Championship, because during the AFC Championship, you never really thought that, maybe some people did. I never really had the thought process that the Bills were going to beat Kansas City. But last year, that was totally in play, and it should have been a Bills victory. And you win that game, you have the road to the Super Bowl through Buffalo. You have Cincinnati at home, most likely win that. Then you're playing the Rams in a very winnable Super Bowl contest. And what we've seen with Sean McDermott a couple times in these big games or even big moments throughout the season is sometimes when it's the biggest stage, we're not seeing the best coaching. I don't doubt his prep. I don't doubt his knowledge and what he's doing, but I think sometimes he gets a little too conservative in times when he can't. Now, with the Bills, a lot of times they can get away with being conservative because they're jumping out to such tremendous leads that you're going to hold off most teams with the Bills offense. Even if another team scores 10 straight points to tie a game, the Bills offense will still respond and win most of the time. But you go back to the Houston Texans playoff game where you get out to a nice lead, and the Bills blew that game against the Texans in Josh's second season. You look last year in the playoffs, there's the Jaguars game. There's some examples now of where coaching has had an impact. It's way too early to say he's holding them back when it matters, but he did potentially cost them a chance at winning a Super Bowl last year based on what he did in the last 13 seconds of that game. So it's one of those things where way too early, but this is also a fan base that still says that Marv Levy fell short as a coach for not winning a Super Bowl in the 90s. So it's one of those things. Until you win one, you're going to always point the finger at the coach. But let's get to the second point that we have on here, Kevin. It kind of lines up exactly with what we were just talking about. This is a big one nationally. Von Miller is going to be the person that gets the Bills over the edge, pushing them to their first Super Bowl championship.
It's tough in a team sport. It's tough to say that one player can do that, but I think with as talented of a roster that the Bills have, I think it's very easily to say that if they needed to add somewhere, it had to have been the pass rush. Look, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, you couldn't get him down in that game. That was the biggest issue. Sure, he found good throws and good reads to Tyreek Hill, to Travis Kelce. He was making all-world throws as well, just like Josh Allen was. But at the same time, like, the Bills needed to get him to the ground, right? If they had a pass rusher, that game could have been different. And it's kind of what happened in the regular season when the Bills were able to get to him, rattle him a little bit. That tipped interception by Greg Rousseau. Just they had that ability in the regular season game, and they didn't in the playoffs. So I do believe that if they're missing some, we talk about the advanced analytics, we talk about their pressures, we talk about splash plays all the time. But the thing the Bills were missing was just like a standard sack. Like, yes, they were okay at it, it was very peppered against some worse opponents. But the Bills really needed to get down Patrick Mahomes, and Von Miller is definitely going to be one that can do it. If he stays healthy, I do believe a healthy Von Miller is the difference between 13 seconds and not 13 seconds. It's the difference between Sean McDermott having the ability to make the blunder to kick it through the end zone rather than squibbing it and taking off 4 seconds. So I think it's that difference, Mike, that yes, needed to have a little bit better to our last segment, a little bit better of a coaching decision there. Or apparently the decision was fine. The relaying it to the kicker, which may or may not be worse. And having a player like Von Miller that I think can bring him over the hump. That is my prediction. Needs to stay healthy. I do believe the Bills agree that they still are missing. They keep sinking draft picks into the defensive end position. They are missing that premier pass rusher that can take the steam off of the cornerbacks who are already pretty good, and the secondary in general, as well as the linebackers. So I believe that player can take off some heat from Rousseau at Oliver, and even help and run. So yes, I do believe that someone healthy Von Miller for this season brings the Bills over the hump to winning the Super Bowl last year. They were the best team left of the top 5. Kansas City, Cincinnati, and as well as LA, who was still around too.
Yeah, so this is a narrative that's easy to push because it fits something that was missing from the Bills defense last year, and you're getting a future Hall of Famer, big publicity, and this is what helps make those off-season narratives juicy and so appealing to get out there. I don't believe that it's a fair narrative, though, because one player, especially a single defensive player, is not going to be the difference between you winning and losing a Super Bowl. It might be the difference in a game or two where maybe you get that strip sack late, or maybe you make a big play, but that's not the difference between actually winning and losing a Super Bowl. Outside of quarterback, I can't really say that about any player, but Von Miller is going to make a tremendous difference. If the Bills get that Von Miller that we saw in the playoffs last year for the Rams, yeah, that's going to help them definitely win, but I'm not going to say that one player gets them over the edge, but it certainly does make a tremendous impact. The question will be, what type of Von Miller do we see this year? The Bills like to rotate their players in and out. They want him fresh for the playoffs. I'm just going to assume the Bills are going to make the playoffs this year. But obviously they're going to want him fresh, so they're not going to want him tired. It's a 17-game regular season, so how do they manage Von Miller throughout the regular season? That's going to be something that I'm going to be very interested in. Do I like the narrative? No, but do I like the possibility of him getting them over the edge? Yes, I do. Getting to the next one, this one I like a lot. Gabe Davis is poised to be a future Pro Bowl receiver. What is your take on this narrative? This one kind of circling all throughout Bills Mafia ever since that 4-touchdown performance against Kansas City.
I believe so. With the reps, he showed that he could be in this offense too. Got to take in a couple of factors. Could, Gabriel Davis on a different team? I don't know. But I believe in this situation, with this offense, with this quarterback, with this receiver across from him in terms of Stephon Diggs, Jamison Crowder, and others, he is poised to be in the Pro Bowl. Do you in terms of this year? I believe so, but I definitely think he's a Pro Bowl receiver in a Bills uniform in his career. But I do believe it's this as soon as this year. I think he's that good. The only thing he's going to always have working for him is that you have it all, basically an all-pro receiver next to you. And he's going to command even in his down years. Stephon Diggs is going to command, 1,100, 12, 13, 1,400 yards. How many yards can go around between Gabriel Davis, in this case, Jamison Crowder, Dawson Knox, OJ Howard, James Cook? At some point that is one ball. But I do believe, especially if Diggs goes down at any point in a season, this season or next, not even long-term, I mean short-term, I think Gabriel Davis could have the statistics to do so. I mean, he really almost made many lists in the divisional game. The playoffs, he played well in general. The playoffs alone this season. So I believe with the reps, no that wide receiver 2 taking snaps away from him. Still has a player in the slot to kind of help him out. I mean, he's going to get, but you can't double cover Gabe Davis. There's just no way. So single coverage. He's going against the team's sometimes third best corner, second best corner, fourth best corner, based on if the team's best corner's in the slot, based on the best team's covering Stephon Diggs. He's at best playing at second and third best corners in a league that has limited corners, depending on the team. I do believe Gabriel Davis can get it done. And, teams like the Patriots will get smart against him, Mike. They'll put the number 2 corner, but then have a safety over the top and then put their number 1 corner against Diggs, or, vice versa. They'll put the number 1 corner against Gabriel Davis and then have number 2 corner and a safety over Diggs. So either way, so they're going to need to get strategic, but I do believe Gabriel Davis, I like that narrative. I do believe Gabriel Davis will have enough to be a Pro Bowl receiver.
Yeah, I like the narrative too. I'm not going to say it for this year. I don't think he's at the point where you're going to see him make the Pro Bowl in his 3rd season with the Bills, but I do think he's going to be a future Pro Bowler. You've already seen a ton of potential from him. And I like the one comment. He's a touchdown machine. You got to give him credit. He finds the end zone. Granted, he's not facing he's not the main threat on this Bills offense, so he has the ability to take advantage of matchups, and that it helps when you have a guy like Josh Allen throwing darts and throwing you open at times too. But it's as long as you're in this situation, you have Stephon Diggs next to you for the probably for at least a while, and you have these other targets all over the field, you're going to get a chance to put up some good numbers. And I trust that Davis is going to be around a 7 to 12 touchdown a year player. You just look at what he did in the AFC divisional round. He was uncoverable, just a huge impact. And when the Bills have decided to utilize him, he's gone off. You look back to his rookie year, he was a touchdown machine then. And really last year only made an impact half the season. But if you look at the numbers during that half of the season, just were unbelievable. So I think there are legitimate reasons to think that he's going to be a stud in the future. Will he ever be a Stephon Diggs-like player putting up 100-plus catches, 1,200, 1,300 yards? I don't see that, but I could see him be a 65 catch guy around 1,000 yards, 11, 12 touchdowns in seasons in the future. So I definitely am excited about his potential. Next one, Kev, and I just gave you this list about 30 minutes before the show, an hour before the show. So I don't know how much thought you've put in all these topics, but the narrative that I have here is that Deshaun Watson should be suspended for the entire 2022 season. I personally think it could be longer than that, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be less. Who knows how the NFL will respond to all this. But what do you think about the narrative that the NFL should throw the hammer at Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, they're going to throw the hammer. I think they're going to give him a 2-year suspension and maybe count 1 year time served. I don't know how that's going to work in terms of last year. He didn't play. So I don't know if he's going to be able to negotiate that in the CBA in terms of the players union going to be able to say like, well, he didn't get paid or play last year. He probably got paid, but he didn't play last year. So I'm not sure how last year is going to factor into it. They might get off the hook by giving him a 2-year suspension with 1 year time served, Mike. That's kind of what I've been thinking. And thus he's going to, they might give him an initial 2-year suspension. They're going to say 1. He's going to argue, I spent 1 last year suspended. You can't just put me on the commissioner's list and not count that. And then this year as well. So I believe that they're going to be the sticking point. Yeah, I mean, the contract's structured for a year suspension. Like you're going to see Jacoby Brissett starting. You're going to see Baker Mayfield in Carolina or somewhere else. And yeah, I believe he's suspended. He deserves every ounce of it. Those are gruesome reports based on what we've heard. I just don't want any part of Deshaun Watson in this league right now until he seeks some major help. And I'm all about, second chances and redemption in for most cases, but he's got some pretty bad allegations against him.
Yeah, this is a PR nightmare for the NFL right now.
How do you trade for him though, Mike?
I don't know.
Trade for him?
I don't know. And
besides getting him for free, and I still wouldn't do it.
What you have to look at is for up until maybe 10 years ago, NFL organizations didn't give a crap what you did off the field. They didn't. Dante Stallworth was involved in a DUI that killed a person, and he was back in the NFL. You had Ray Lewis with his issues. You've had a lot of players with sexual incidents off the field, domestic violence off the field that have all returned. But now it's society is different. Society is not as accepting of things as they were in the past, and that's probably a good thing that we're not accepting of some of this horrible behavior. And it's a step in the right direction. With Deshaun Watson, where the trouble for the NFL comes in is he hasn't gotten the legal process hasn't finished with him. So there really isn't anything from a legal standpoint that the NFL can turn to and be like, well, we're going to throw the boat at you. But the personal conduct policy is pretty vague. And we've seen other players get long suspensions for way, way less than what Deshaun Watson has gone through. And just the constant stories, the increasing number of women coming out, how can you just dismiss it? I could understand if it was 1 or 2 women and they proved that maybe they were going after money or something, even that would be a sketchy a thing for the NFL to just instantly devalue. But 24 women coming forward, and they're saying that there's reports of even more women that confirm that haven't come out and put themselves in lawsuits. I think with Deshaun Watson, you're looking at a year minimum. And I think when the Browns traded for him, they were expecting this to go away. They were hoping that he was going to report to OTAs, training camp, play well whenever he eventually does see the field, and that this would just quietly be pushed under and not talked about. And it's clear now with everything that's happening, this is not going to go away, and this is going to be a story for years to come. So what was Cleveland thinking? I don't know, because they might not have a star quarterback, and now their number 1 draft pick is unhappy, probably never going to play for them again, and you have Jacoby Brissett. So way to go, Browns. Just
too bad. Yeah,
just
it's a weird, it's a crazy situation. The one that's just
and we don't want to go too deep into that, but maybe we'll talk a little bit about that later. Maybe not. Next one. This is one that we alluded to a little bit on the show a couple weeks ago. We're hearing a lot of Tua hype right now, whether it's legitimate or just Miami fans trying to pump themselves up and find something to believe in. You believe the narrative coming out of Miami that Tua will be vastly improved this year with a new offensive scheme and new playmakers around him, including Tyreek Hill?
No, he's going to be the same player. No. Is he going to be bad? No, probably when he's healthy and he's playing, he's fine. I don't have him doing too much. He's just not going to be a threat to the AFC. Do the Dolphins always have the chance to grab one of those wild cards? Sure. Like the Patriots did last year. There's definitely some teams that do have the ability to play well enough, and they do at times to get it. I've just ultimately, the Bills defense plays them very well in terms of against upper echelon teams. You know, to me, the biggest sign that you're developing is being able to beat the Bills defense, because that shows me that you're in that category of quarterbacks that back to the initial statement, that Sean McDermott struggles against. So, and in his scheme, there's openings against the Tom Brady's and the Patrick Mahomes, but his scheme really foils the middle tier and lower. So I haven't seen it yet. He can't take a hit. He's never healthy. There's conceivable notion that he'll play well at times throughout stretches. I just don't think he's in the upper echelon. I do think he'll make a play against some of the lesser guys and be able to keep them above 500 possibility, maybe sneak in a wild card, Mike, but I have him being okay. Like, I don't have him sucking.
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by vastly improved. If you're talking about maybe throwing 20 to 25 touchdowns, 3,000 to 3,500 yards, I think Tua is going to have decent numbers. I think it's going to be hard for Tua not to have decent numbers with some of the playmakers in front of him. The Miami has an improved offensive line. They have Jalen Waddle. Now you have Tyreek Hill. You have Mike Gesicki. You got a good group of running backs that you just added this offseason. I think you put most quarterbacks with that situation, and they're going to do pretty decently. Now you got a head coach that's good at scheming run offenses. That's going to take some of the pressure off the passing game. I think he's going to be successful this year in Miami. I'm not going to say he's going to be great, but I think Miami is an 8 to 10 win team with the guys that they have. Nothing great, but I think they'll be decent from that perspective. Vastly improved, that's a little bit too strong for my taste, but I do think he will look improved, and he'll be a respectable starting quarterback. I think when it all plays out, Tua is going to be a 15 to 20 type quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he'll ever be a top 10 guy, but I think he has some good aspects to his game. His arm strength is obviously an issue, but if he can be a game manager, if he can be smart, process the field, and get the ball out quickly, he might be able to make up for it. He doesn't need to throw 40, 50, 60-yard bombs. He just needs to be able to be smart out there on the field. And if he does, he has some guys to be successful. Next one,
we'll see.
Sorry, if you anything else to go with that one?
Nope, that's all I got on Tua.
Yeah, the next one, hopping in the AFC East, sticking in the AFC East, Zach Wilson with the Jets. Now here you got a quarterback that actually does have the physical tools, the attributes that you want to be successful, but does he have the ability to put it all together, especially in a place like New York that has just been nothing but failure for close to a decade now?
It's tough. Like the discussion is, will he make a huge sophomore leap? No, I think he'll make a manageable sophomore leap. I think he'll make a slight sophomore leap. I just don't usually see the big acquisitions really doing too much to help. Like, so we got Garrett Wilson in, we got Breece Hall. Obviously we have Elijah Moore and Corey Davis there. some defensive additions in Jermaine Johnson, Sauce Gardner to help him out, maybe get the ball back, etc. Jeremy Ruckert on at the tight end role, CJ Uzuma, Tyler Conklin at the tight end position. I really don't. I think that he has some of the physical tools. I didn't see enough from him to show me that he's going to take that huge sophomore leap. It's generally the year you struggle in, even guys that show like Baker. It's guys that show that you can develop. So no, I don't believe so. Does that mean his career is over? No, I think the Jets are better. I think you'll see some stuff out of him. And then we'll have this conversation this time next year about his third-year leap.
Yeah, Zach Wilson's an interesting guy because for as critical as we all are about Tua, he's at least had some flashes in the NFL so far. Zach Wilson has not had those same flashes, in my opinion. He has attributes that a lot of people are a fan of, but he hasn't really given much film to be excited about. Now, the Jets made some strong moves this offseason. They helped improve their team, but they're not even at the Miami level, in my opinion. I look at the Jets as a 6-7 win team, if that, going into next year. With Zach Wilson, I think for him, he's going to need to rely on some of the things that made Josh Allen successful early in his career, using his legs, trying to improvise. I think he's the type of quarterback, if you go too much by the book, he's going to struggle. And I think he needs to sometimes just do his own thing. And that's how I think he will be able to gut through the second season. I think he'll be okay. But his rookie year left a lot to be desired. And we'll see if he has another year like his rookie season. The Jets might need to start looking at quarterback again, entering year 3, or at least come up with a backup plan, because they're going on too many seasons of just being absolutely horrible. Now, the next topic, Kev, I think you'll like this one, is the narrative the Patriots are done moving forward, which is kind of a interesting narrative considering they're coming off a wild card season in which they almost won the AFC East, taking the Bills down to the final week of the season. But I think with the way the rest of the AFC has improved this offseason, nationally, people have just dismissed the Patriots going forward. Do you think it's fair, a fair narrative heading into this year?
Yeah, I think they're in dismay. Like, I think there's a better chance Tua does something than I do believe that the Patriots are going to be successful. I think you'll always get a good brand of Patriot football in terms of winning some games, in terms of having stretches. They faltered down the stretch last year, look horrible after that fluky Bills win. After that, their season, that was like it. And I just personally don't believe the Patriots have too much any longer, Mike. I do believe they are done. I do believe you'll see 500 football. I don't ever think you'll see a bottom out. It's quite possible. I do think they are a little bit more talented than to bottom out. Ultimately, they didn't want to pick an offensive coordinator. They don't have anything. They were having OTA issues. I have them not overly competitive. Could they always sneak into a wild card with the 7 spots? It's there for them. But I still think that there's a season when they're just going to just continue to go, 7-10, 8-9. I do believe the Bill Belichick factor pushes them at 8-9, 9-8, along those lines. They'll win some AFC East games. Their schedule's not the easiest here in the league, the Bills and the Patriots. So I believe it. So I do believe in that narrative that they're done. I do really think that they need a full rebirth. And maybe it comes soon with Mac Jones, but maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I guess your answer to this question depends on what you think of Mac Jones as a quarterback and how high do you think his ceiling is going forward. Looking at Patriots OTAs, it looks like Mac Jones is loose. Patriots fans seem to like him, feel confident in him going forward. But I'm with the national narrative. The Patriots, as we know them, they're finished. Maybe they'll squeak in as a wild card every few years. Maybe even in an off year for the Bills, maybe they could win the AFC East here or there. But as far as competing for Super Bowls, expecting to win playoff games, that's long gone. That ended the moment that Tom Brady left. And you look at the AFC right now, it's just too loaded of a conference. You got to win. If you're the Patriots, you got to win with dominant defense and hope that Mac Jones can carry you late. And that's just not a winning recipe when you're going up against quarterbacks like Josh Allen on the Bills, when you're going up against AFC West teams like the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Raiders, and even in the AFC North where you have Lamar Jackson, you got Joe Burrow, potentially Deshaun Watson. So it's hard for me to think that the Patriots will really be a legitimate threat anytime soon. If they were in the NFC, different story. Maybe they could be a playoff team, probably would be in the NFC, and maybe they could make a run every now and then, but it ain't happening, especially in the AFC East. I'm with you on that. Now, going out west, there's a lot of AFC West topics we could talk about, but I'm going to combine one of them. A narrative this offseason that I've been hearing a lot of ever since Tyreek Hill was traded to the Dolphins, and even a little bit before that, is that the Chargers, not the Chiefs, the Chargers are the team to beat in the AFC West, and that not that the Chiefs are done, but that they will take a step back without Tyreek Hill. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that game doesn't happen last year without Tyreek Hill. Doesn't. I'm sorry. I don't believe so. I think Patrick Mahomes is very good. A lot of insecure Chiefs fans, always have to battle like how good he is compared to Josh Allen. I mean, great, but I do believe they're going to have some issues. They're going to need to find their guy. Are they going to go to Juju Smith-Schuster? Are they going to go to Sky Moore? Like, what's it going to look like when the game's on the line? Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like, what's it going to look like deep in the games? Sure, Travis Kelce, but I do believe that puts more pressure on him. As teams are, they're going to be able to feel a little bit more comfortable putting as many guys on him as possible and praying for better single coverage against Mecole Hardman. Like I said, MVS, Sky Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, guys that can be single covered, taking away their best player beside Patrick Mahomes, or at least one of them. Great news. I do believe the Chargers could be, but like we've heard this before, when it's like someone saying that someone's better than the Bills, they got to prove it though, Mike. You can't just be the Dolphins because they did this, or the Jets or the Patriots because they want to win game. I don't quite buy into the narratives because the Chiefs have the X factor, which is Patrick Mahomes, and he's that good. So I can't fully buy into the narrative, but I am feeling better about taking a bite out of the Chiefs, and the Chargers straight up need to make the playoffs first.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I like the narrative. I don't love the narrative because I really do believe the Chargers, especially after this offseason, they have all the talent in the world to be the best team in the AFC West.
Yeah.
They have all the talent in the world to be the best team in the AFC, but they have yet to do it yet. They've had 2 straight years where that could have been them, but they didn't. So with Justin Herbert, I'll believe it when I see it. I think the Chargers are a legitimate threat. I do think they could be very scary, but I'm still picking Kansas City in Mahomes in the West. Yeah. And how much will Tyreek Hill being gone make an impact on the Chiefs? I don't know. We'll see. It's definitely takes away some of their scary factor, where you go into games against Kansas City and you believe now, okay, we have an ability to maybe slow this offense down a little bit. But you're still going up against Patrick Mahomes, who's one of the most unique, amazing talents the NFL has ever seen. So how will he do without Tyreek Hill? That'll be interesting, because last year the Chiefs were vulnerable. They got off to a slow start. And even when they started getting back on track, there was games they could have lost that they found a way to squeak out. They could have easily not won that division if they continued that poor play in the beginning of the year. But they were able to squeak by. And this year, without having Tyreek Hill, will they squeak by in the games that are close at the end when they need a touchdown late to pull away? We'll see. And I even remember the one game the Broncos lost because they fumbled the ball late with an opportunity to add to their lead. So that's going to be the second point we have in the AFC West. The Broncos are going to be the top newcomer in the NFL this year. They are going to be the team that has the biggest rise from where they were last year to where they are now with Russell Wilson on board. Are you buying that narrative? Because
I'm buying that narrative.
I am. I'm definitely.
Russell Wilson's one of those guys that just had nothing on his team last year. And I fully buy that. I fully buy him with the ability. I don't know what's going on with Jerry Jeudy, but I do know with like Courtland Sutton, they like Tim Patrick there. They have they always have some good play there. They drafted Greg Dulcich, a guy I really liked. So they do have some talent. Obviously, the running backs and Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon still to help them get it done. It's not a stacked team by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't look at that, especially with, I'm not sure where Judy's at with his stuff. The offensive line's okay with Lloyd Cushenberry, Quinn Miners, Dalton Risner, Garrett Bowles. They do have some talent there, and their defense is always going to perform well. And head coach Nathaniel Hackett, can he get it done? I don't know, but I do believe Russell Wilson is one of those game changers. I believe it's a step up roster from the Seattle. I believe they're a wild card team. I don't believe they're more than that, but I do believe they're a wild card team.
And if they're a wild card team, they're going to be a good wild card team at that. Russell Wilson is a game changer for Denver. I don't think that he's ever been one of the top 3 quarterbacks in football, but he's consistently been in that 4 to 6 range for
every year, essentially
his entire career. And you get a quarterback like that on an already talented roster, you're going to be pretty good. And you go through the entire AFC, you rank the teams 1 to 16. It's hard not to have Denver as one of the top 7 teams in the AFC. The toughest challenge for them, it will just be the division itself. When you have 6 games in your division and not one is a gimme, that's tough. Like the Bills, I don't want to say any game in the AFC East is a gimme, but when you're playing the Jets twice and that worst case, you're probably going to split against the Dolphins, split against New England, you're probably going to have a good division mark for the Bills. 4-2, probably worst case scenario. Maybe 3-3 if they really falter. In the AFC West, you could be a good team and go 3-3, 2-4, even 1-5 in that division. Comment here: don't sleep on the Raiders. You can't sleep on the Raiders. People forget they made the playoffs last year. So that's the funny thing. We keep hyping Denver and Kansas City. The Raiders went to the playoffs. Same thing with Pittsburgh. They made the playoffs. Sometimes it's the teams that miss it that you actually think are better than the teams that somehow squeak in and make it. But I am definitely high on Denver. I feel like if they would have had adequate quarterback play the last couple of years, that they could have been dangerous. And they also had a coach that I believe held them back dramatically from an offensive style. Great defense, but just some mind-baffling decisions sometimes on the offensive side of the ball, which gets us to our next one. And this one is one I want to take credit for last year for being high on this team. The Cincinnati Bengals. And the narrative that I'm going to play out this right now is the Bengals are the team to beat in the AFC North. They're the top dog. Do you buy that narrative, or are you going to dismiss it?
I'm going to dismiss it because I still believe that there's some possibilities in the Baltimore Ravens. I still believe that that's a good football team that gets it done with their running backs back. They're always smart with what they do in their acquisitions. I can't just give them the top dog. Could they come out on top? Of course. I just am not going to sit here and lay down Baltimore back to back mediocre years. I mean, that's still, they added a center. They got really, a lot better adding Kyle Hamilton on defense. They Travis Jones, a nose tackle that I really like, David Ajobo, some really big additions on the Baltimore side. Obviously, you have Mark Andrews. They did trade away Marquise Hollywood Brown, but to me, still some talent there. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Mike Davis, still ability to run the ball. Lamar should be back and healthy. Adding to the offensive line, Mike. I can't just give it to Cincinnati right now. I think it's a weird division. I think that you don't really know what's going to happen there, but Cleveland seems out. Pittsburgh seems out. I can't just give it to Cincinnati though.
Yeah, I can't give it to Cincinnati either. And I was high on them last year. I entered last year thinking that Cincinnati could be an 8-9 win team. And I didn't think they would win the AFC North and go to the Super Bowl and nearly win the Super Bowl. I think you would have to be crazy to enter last year and think that. But I was high on them. And I've told you guys all the reasons in the past. I've been super high on Joe Burrow since he was in high school. And I think Joe Burrow has already established himself as easily a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And as he goes on in his career, I think Joe Burrow is going to be considered a top 3, maybe better quarterback. I don't know. He's not there yet. But I think we could legitimately be talking about Joe Burrow among the crowd of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes for the next decade. I'm that high on Burrow. I think he is Peyton Manning-esque. He is smart. His ball placement is tremendous. He reads defenses at an elite level, and his playmakers are just absolutely phenomenal in Cincinnati. Now that he has his LSU teammate Jamar Chase, it's good luck. Like, they already killed it in the SEC, and now they're killing it in his rookie year in the NFL. But even with all that said, I can't give them the top dog label yet. I think the Ravens, the last couple years going in, were the top dogs in the AFC North. And last year they were dealing with a lot of injuries. I don't think we got a good look at what the Ravens truly were last season. And this comment here, Bengals might not even make the playoffs this year. Well, with the way the AFC is looking, that's a possibility. Will that fuel them, some of the doubt? If you're Cincinnati and you're seeing all this love about the Bills as the Super Bowl favorites, and you're hearing talk about the Chargers being the best team in the AFC West when the Chiefs just went to the AFC Championship.
Yep.
If I'm Cincinnati, I'm starting to question, why am I being looked at as the 4th, 5th, 6th best team in my own conference that I went to the Super Bowl last year? But I think those are legitimate questions. Are they a one-year wonder? Are they more than that? Well, this is the year they got to prove it. And we'll see. Depending on what happens with Deshaun Watson, honestly, if Deshaun Watson plays for the Browns this year, which I don't think is likely, I might even pick Cleveland to win the division. So we'll see how it all plays out. But Bengals and
you did have the Bills losing to Cleveland this year, Mike.
Yeah, I'm high in Cleveland if Deshaun Watson plays. I don't want to see him play. Honestly, I hope to never see Deshaun Watson play on a football field ever again. But if Deshaun Watson is on Cleveland, I think they're my AFC North favorites heading into this year. And going on to the next one, this one is one that I'm excited to talk about.
It's the NFC time, guys. We're going to get into the NFC here.
Time. We got to talk a little NFC, and then we'll obviously wrap up with a few Bills things and get you guys all out of here. The Giants will have a giant leap this year, pun intended, under Brian Daboll.
I just don't see. I don't like Daniel Jones. Like, I don't think that roster is good enough. I do like Shane a little bit from the general manager position. I like some of the stuff he was able to do this offseason. I just don't ultimately think that roster is talented enough all around. Like, I do like a little bit of what Wan'Dale Robinson can do. Possibly, Kadarius Toney, if he's still on the team. I don't think he's getting along with Daboll. Something's going on there. Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard. I think they take a little bit of a leap going in the right direction. I don't see it. I don't really like that defense at all. There's not a lot to like with some of the names there besides Thibodeau, who they just picked up from the draft here early on. And, obviously Leonard Williams is pretty good, but, it's still a defense that can be taken advantage of. I don't ultimately think there's enough there.
Yeah, giant leap might be a little bit too much for me to buy into the narrative, but I do like the Giants' future. I do think they're going to find success under Brian Daboll and Joe Shen as general manager. Maybe I buy too much into the Buffalo method, how they did things here after Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott stole from Carolina. But I think Daboll is a smart football mind. He did magical work with Josh Allen. Now, he didn't really do much with other offenses when he was an O coordinator, but if the Giants are patient with him, I think they will take a step forward. I don't hate Daniel Jones. I don't necessarily like him, but I don't hate him.
How is he different than like Tua, right? Right?
Yeah,
isn't it the same?
So I think the thing, Daniel Jones has had flashes. I think what kills him more is everyone used to talk about, oh, Josh Allen will make a boneheaded play out of nowhere. That's just like, you can't believe that he's going to do this. And I always thought that narrative was kind of overplayed. Yeah, Josh Allen had some horrific looking plays, but he didn't really have a million like the frequency the national media would always talk about Josh Allen. Daniel Jones is the opposite. He has some of the worst plays on a frequent basis at the worst times. But when he's not doing like that, he can actually look solid at moments. I think the Giants are probably going to be like a 7-win team, 6-7 win team this year under Daboll. They got a couple good guys on that roster, but Joe Judge was horrible. he was just an awful coach, and I think he could go to the Bills and find a way to make the Bills struggle. That's how low I am on Joe Judge. I think just having Brian Daboll is going to help them take a little step forward. It's probably not going to be this year, but I think in the upcoming years they will get better. But the next one, Kevin, Jalen Hurts will be the best quarterback out of Oklahoma in recent memory, out of the group of Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and himself. Do you buy that narrative? And if you do you think the Eagles could be the team to beat in the NFC East?
No, I don't even think I'm not 100% sure he starts the entire season. Like, I'm really not. I think he could. I think it's likely that he does. I'm not 100% though. I'm Kyler all the way. I think Kyler is a difference maker. I think when his team's ticking on all cylinders, he's got the coaching staff. They have the offensive talent. He's had some injuries. He's had some issues in the past. There's some lapses there, but I think Kyler Murray's the best by far. He brings a different dynamic to the field. He can make a lot of the NFL throws that he needs to. He's got the dynamic ability to run the ball. I mean, he's got players like AJ Green, Hollywood Brown went there, Rondale Moore, obviously when Hopkins comes back, Zach Ertz, there's definitely some names there. And I do believe they, tried to get better on the offensive line, adding Will Hernandez. And they still have, names like DJ Humphries, Justin Pugh, Rodney Hudson, Kelvin Beachum, added Lexius Smith in the draft. I don't know. I like what Arizona can do. I'm all the way in on Kyler Murray. I just think he's a special player. I like him probably more than the average person. I do believe he's going to be better than Baker, but no, I'm not 100% sure. We don't even know what they were thinking about the quarterback position this entire offseason, let alone sitting here and saying that he's going to be the best one out of this group of guys. I don't know. It's tough for me to say they're all the way bought in when a guy like Gardner Minshew's there, and they did take a flyer on Carson Strong. Likely he plays every game, but it's not far-fetched to see some Gardner Minshew this season.
And to the second point, are the Cowboys the team to beat in the NFC East, or would you have Philadelphia there?
Yeah, the Cowboys. I'm always going to go with the Cowboys. I think that they're a talented enough team. Like, I'm a Dak fan all the way through and through. I think he's a pretty good football player. Had some lapses, struggles at times, but ultimately with the likes of still having Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, he seems to develop these guys out of nowhere. This year it could be Jalen Tolbert in the third round. They always make a tight end. Dalton Schultz is there, and obviously the Zeke and Tony Pollard combo does still work for him. I like what they can do. They need to shore up the defensive side, but if we're talking strictly offense, they made it to the playoffs, had a weird slide in the playoffs that screwed them up, but ultimately I'm a pretty big fan of the Cowboys. I still think it's their division to lose.
So this is an interesting one to me. I'm high on the Eagles. I think Philadelphia is going to start playing some good football going forward. They squeaked into the playoffs somehow last year. Did not see that coming. And the way the NFC East works with how teams go up and down, I do think the Eagles can win this division. Would you say they're a favorite? I think they got a 50-50 chance with Dallas. I don't think it's a lock that the Cowboys are going to win the division. I think the Eagles can definitely give them a good fight. And when you compare those quarterbacks, I'll tell you this. Baker Mayfield was way overvalued coming out of college. He was a guy that went number one overall because of analytics, but analytics don't always tell the full story. Analytics are important, as are the eye test. And you look at a guy like Josh Allen, he didn't put up good analytics in college, but he had all the skills and all the attributes you look for, and the Bills they molded him into a great quarterback. Baker Mayfield was a guy that everybody just assumed because he was already good at a high level in college that he was going to translate to NFL. I didn't understand that. I thought he was a second, third round pick quarterback that the guy elevated in the draft process because people thought he was smart. And I still like Baker. I think he's in the same as the Tua category, somebody that can have peaks where for moments you think he's a top 12, 13 quarterback, and then he has low moments where you think he's a 20, 21, 22, 23 ranked quarterback. But I like Jalen Hurts more than I like Baker. I think Jalen Hurts will have every opportunity to be successful this year. You got Devontae Adams. You got A.J. Brown. You got Dallas Goedert. This team has weapons. Hurts he's an athletic quarterback, has the ability to run. And it's ironic because all those years at Alabama where people are saying he's not good enough to get it done, he's not good enough to take us to that next level, gets benched for Tua. Who would you rather have now in the NFL, Tua or Jalen Hurts? 9 out of 10 people are going to say Jalen Hurts. Eventually transfers to Oklahoma. Oklahoma had Baker Mayfield. They had Kyler Murray. And now it's Jalen Hurts that might have just as good of a career as any of them. We'll see. Kyler Murray is a special talent. He's elite. And I would still take Kyler Murray over Jalen Hurts at this moment in time. But there's some things I worry about Kyler Murray. The Cardinals had a rapid decline where they just fell down quickly last year, and the same thing happened the year before. I don't know if I love Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach either. A lot of questionable calls. Yes, they play a fun brand of football at times, but when they fall apart, they are just awful. While Kyler is more polished and has higher upside than what a Jalen Hurts has, I think I like the direction maybe of where Philadelphia is going more than I do Arizona. Arizona's competing in the NFC West where you're going to have to battle with the Rams defense going forward. You're going to have to battle with the 49ers. Yes, Seattle's fallen off the map, but in the NFC East, you only have the Cowboys to worry about. So I do think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Jalen Hurts. And if you were talking just strictly fantasy, he'd be one of the top 5-10 picks at quarterback in the entire fantasy draft. So I do think that he can be good. Do the Cowboys get 10 or 11 wins? I'll say they get probably 11. Eagles are probably going to be in that 10-11 range too. But let's go on to the next one. Kev, a sneaky pick for the Super Bowl by some people this year. Do you think the Saints are dangerous if Jameis Winston ends up being their starting quarterback?
Yeah, I think that roster is good enough. I like Chris Olave with Michael Thomas, could bring a lot of pop out of that. I still like some of the fringe players they have. Jarvis Landry's there in the slot. They still have Taysom Hill doing his thing, and Adam Troutman they like a little bit. Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram. There's a lot of good talent on that offense. With the Andrews Pete, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, it's a pretty good offense, and Jameis Winston's known to take advantage of that situation. He'll still turn the ball over a lot. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but that defense is always adding to that defense. Marshawn Lattimore, Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis has been pretty good. Marcus Davenport. I mean, it's a pretty good team. And to answer the initial question, I do believe they're dangerous with Jameis Winston starting and their players healthy. It's a good roster. I have them making the playoffs and making some noise. Definitely don't think I have them even in the NFC Championship game, but I do have them as a competitive roster making the playoffs.
I am not buying this narrative. I think Jameis Winston could be decent. I don't think he's going to be great. I was kind of underwhelmed by him in the limited stretches we saw before he got hurt last year. I thought Jameis was going to be much better. Obviously a former number 1 overall pick. Threw way too many interceptions in Tampa. I thought a year behind Drew Brees was going to help him really elevate his game to another level. And I didn't really see any of that. And now you got a new head coach. I believe it's Dennis Allen taking over down in New Orleans. The Saints have a good defense at times. I just don't know if they're truly great. Maybe in the NFC, they squeak in the playoffs as a wild card. They seem to always give Tampa Bay problems. But are they a team that really is a Super Bowl contender? I don't see that one. But we'll skip past that one. We got 2 more to go, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Maybe a quick few minutes about the Bills before ending the show. The Rams have a realistic chance at repeating as Super Bowl champs. Do you buy that?
Sure. I mean, realistic is probably relative enough. Sure. Like they did get all their deals done. They got Matthew Stafford done. They got Aaron Donald done. They just recently got Cooper Kupp done. The roster is pretty good. Added Keenan Allen. I think the roster is plenty talented enough across the board that they really only had Von Miller for a specific top point in time last year anyways. I do believe the roster is good enough to come definitely out of the NFC, which is weaker in my opinion. To win it all, I don't know about that. I do believe that if you're saying to make it at least to the NFC Championship game, yeah, definitely a realistic chance. To win that game, possibly to make it to win the Super Bowl? No, but I do believe the Rams are good enough to be in the top 5. I do.
Yeah, I think it's a fair take. I think the Rams are one of the top 3 teams in the NFC. Obviously, they just won the Super Bowl. Some people are going to say they're one of the top 3 teams in the NFL. It's interesting because I always look at the Rams and think that they should be even better than what they put forth. They're a good team, and they found a way to beat the Bengals, which I didn't think was the most challenging Super Bowl opponent, but they also got it done when they needed to play Tampa Bay on the road. But I don't think they had the most challenging road in the playoffs. They played an Arizona team that was struggling entering the postseason. They played San Francisco's team that did give them trouble in the past, especially last season heading into the playoffs. But really a San Francisco team with Jimmy Garoppolo that was not one of the better teams in the NFL last year. And then you play a Cincinnati team that wasn't even one of the top 2 teams in the AFC, in my opinion. So it was a little bit of an easier road to the Super Bowl than what you would normally typically see. But I do think the Rams have a realistic chance. And if for no other reason, then I think the NFC is absolutely abysmal right now. NFC East, like whatever, like Cowboys, Eagles. Like I don't think either of those teams are a top threat if they're in the AFC. NFC South, maybe the Bucks. NFC North, is Green Bay still all that? No more Devontae Adams. Is Green Bay really a Super Bowl contender? Maybe. I mean, as long as you have Rodgers, that's probably the case. Even the NFC West, it's your top competition, San Fran in Arizona. I think it is there for the Rams to make a run back to the Super Bowl. They have the best team and the best roster in the NFC, in my opinion, which takes us to our final breaking the narrative point before we wrap up. Tom Brady should have just remained retired. Kev, what's your take?
Yes, I believe he should have remained retired. However, I will say this one's tricky because you should go out fairly on top. I thought he got pretty beat up toward the end of the year. Really played pretty good football most of the season, peak football, played the Bills pretty strong, and then started to go downhill a little bit into the playoffs, got beat up, kind of left bloodied. I think he should leave it all on the field there. It is conceivable that his numbers were strong enough that one more season, but he's got to hang it up. I mean, I think this is it. I think this is it with the contract and what he was able to negotiate maybe with his family and his wife and his kids. This has got to be the last of it. This year will be a definite yes. This time next year, I'll give him one more chance at this thing to go out with tons of Super Bowls to show what he could do at his age. But it's finally starting to catch up to him as we saw late in the year. But he did leave some good football on the field. So I thought he should have gone out kind of like Phillip Rivers did with playing some pretty solid football toward the end of his career.
The Bills fan in me says he should have remained retired because I don't want him to ever potentially cost the Bills any chance at winning the Super Bowl. If Tampa Bay gets there, I don't want to hear the storylines if somehow the Bills manage to lose against Tampa Bay in a Super Bowl against Tom Brady. I don't want to hear that. But the football fan and just in me that just enjoys watching the game, I think it's great that he's coming back. He is entertaining. He's one of the best football players in the history of the sport. And he's still playing at a super high level. Yeah, there was a drop-off towards the end of the season, but even with that drop-off, he had his team in a tie game in the NFC divisional with a chance to go to the NFC championship. And if they would have played San Fran, they would have wiped the floor with them and been back in a second consecutive Super Bowl. So I bet you he still believes he can win it all. And there's no reason for Tampa Bay not to believe it. So from his perspective and a football fan perspective, I think it's good that he's back. From a Bills point of view, I wish he would have stayed retired, but you don't always get what you want. But Kev, that's a lot of topics. That's a lot of offseason storylines that we just got through in an hour. Exciting time for the NFL, but a kind of a dead period. It's hard to come up with all these things to talk about right now.
Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in for all the AFC, NFC talk. Wanted to bring some coverage to other teams. We'll get some OTA talk next week. Did finally want to wrap the show with some projections of the Bills' offensive side. We'll talk about some projections that I have here that I've seen across the league. These are per Mike Clay. If what you guys let me know what you think kind of to our initial points of this conversation. They project Stephon Diggs, 97 catches for 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns, not far behind 63 catches for 918 and 9 touchdowns in Gabriel Davis. So he's right on the fringe of that Pro Bowl discussion. It doesn't take much for him to get there. And a relatively good 60 catches for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns from Jamison Crowder. So those are some projection numbers as we think about what to look forward to here as the season starts to be a season. Dawson Knox, milder projection, 46 catches, 557 yards, and only 6 touchdowns. So
that's low. That's
see.
Conservative right there.
And even lower, 12 for 140 and 1 touchdown from OJ Howard. So they don't expect him to be much of a weapon. Nothing from Shakir and McKenzie, only 242 yards and 2 touchdowns are the projections there for the Bills offense. Running the ball, you have Devin Singletary, 902 and 7 touchdowns, 31 catches for 206 and a touchdown. And James Cook only with 375 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, but 43 catches for 324 and 2 touchdowns.
I would take that.
So 700 all-purpose yards, 5 total touchdowns. A little light for me for a second-round draft choice, but we'll see. That's probably close to accurate. But Josh Allen, 4,100, 33 touchdowns and 13 interceptions, but a whopping 681 on the ground with 7 touchdowns this season. So that's the projections from the Bills offense.
I think sometimes when they do these projections, they tend to be a little bit on the conservative side. And sure. I would tend to think that those numbers are going to be more conservative. Josh Allen last year put up better numbers in one of the worst weather seasons I've ever seen from a Buffalo Bills quarterback playing perspective. Like the weather in Buffalo last year was just horrendous the entire season, and he put up better numbers. So if he gets anything halfway decent weather-wise this year, I would expect the Bills to have better offensive numbers. Also, the Bills didn't play in a ton of close games last year. They played in like 6 1-score games, and the rest of them were double-digit victories. So if you're going to be playing in more close contests, your stats are probably going to be a little bit better because you're also going to be putting in the air more. You're going to be trying to score more late in the game. So personally, if I'm going to guess touchdowns, I'd guess Josh Allen probably maybe 36, 37 in the air and maybe another 5 on the ground. But I think he'll be in the low 40s. I think that's more of where he'll be. Dawson Knox is getting more than 46 catches if he's healthy. He's going to be closer to that 55 mark, maybe 650, 7-8 touchdowns. And we'll see. Those are some conservative numbers. The Bills' offense is going to be dynamite this year. I expect the tight ends to play a bigger role. Maybe OJ Howard won't put up a ton of yards, but I do think you're going to see some more 2 tight end sets. And I do think the Bills are going to try to switch a few things up offensively this year. So some of those numbers are a little conservative for my taste.
Yep, there they are. So there are the final numbers. And the Going Deep podcast. Next week, we're going to bring some OTA coverage. We're going to dive into the projections on defense. We're going to talk about the Bills' defensive keys to success for the season in general. We'll have some cool topics. I got another signed football. We're already at 9. We're already at about an hour and 10 minutes in here, 70 minutes in. So we're going to save the signed football, maybe do a live card rip. We'll talk about some stuff next week on the docket. But we appreciate everybody tuning into this Breaking the Narrative edition. Thank you for tuning in. Please smash the like button. Follow us everywhere you can. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, everywhere possible. And as well, please follow along in terms of our offseason. And we're really looking forward to continued coverage of the Buffalo Bills 2022 season and beyond. So thank you for everybody for tuning into this great edition, and really appreciate all you listening on the audio form as well. You guys are great. Tweet in questions always. We know we get to a lot of the stuff in the chat, but if you guys are on audio, please also reach out. We'd love to talk about some of the stuff you guys have. So Apple Podcasts, any of your following platforms like Spotify, etc. Appreciate everybody tuning in there as well on the audio side. But from the Going Deep podcast, Kevin Massare, Mike Bundt, look forward to bring you another great edition next Friday. And it's going to be a special season, guys. So we appreciate you guys sticking in here at the June. You guys are the real champions here, staying with us deep into June. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.
Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
Fridays to me talking about the Bills. What else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action.